Hey, welcome back to Design Discord, the number one design podcast in the world, with your host, Fernando Mastrangelo, and
Alyssa Gerasimov. And I'm so thrilled for this episode because joining us today is my amazing co-founder, Jen Kaplan. She is software engineer extraordinaire, an amazing knitter, and a person that I hope I will spend many years of my life building alongside.
Oh, thank you.
welcome,
Hello, everyone.
Jen. Which I just wanted to start first before we jump in. Just yesterday, our number one fan of the entire pod, my mother-in-law, we were having a conversation because every time we do an episode, she calls me and is like, oh, she just wanted to have some follow-up, some thoughts, some ideas. So shout out Hildy. I love all the ideas. But anyway, we were having this fun conversation about the pod, and she said, I would really like to know a little more about this company that you guys keep talking about. And because she goes, I think I kind of understand it. I think it's, and then she kind of gave me a rundown of what she thought based on the, what we talked about it, a little bit. So, but she had it kind of right. So I was like, dude, we got you. Our next episode is gonna be exactly that. So we're here, and we get to talk a little bit about Erria, the great company that is being built. And so,
Yeah, I'm excited. I feel like I hint on it on social media, we hint on it on the podcast, but I feel like it's really only in the kind of one-on-one conversations that people really know what is going on and what's being built. So I'm excited to have a two-on-one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Before Jen jumps in, although I wanted Jen to jump in a lot, I think you should tell the story. You got to tell the story of Erria, what this is, how it started, to the point where you are today with it.
Yeah. So usually how I kind of start by telling my story is I'll say, I went to RISD and I studied furniture design. After I graduated from school, I kind of went down a little bit of a different path. I was doing kind of communications and branding in the nonprofit sector. But I have always been very entrepreneurial, and I feel like from a very young age, I always knew that it was like my destiny to like start my own company, and I never really imagined that I would be, working for anyone else for the majority of my life. And I feel like after school, I was sort of like on the hunt. Well, like, what's the idea? What's something that I really want to dedicate myself to pursuing? And a few years out of RISD, I started to notice that the folks around me who wanted to pursue full-time careers as makers, as furniture designers, ceramicists, how challenging it is for folks to find visibility for their work. And then at the same time, something that felt really intuitive to me is like there really isn't a place where you could search, oh, I'm looking for a furniture maker in New York City, or I'm looking for, everyone talks about Japanese ceramics, but where do you actually go to connect with a Japanese ceramicist who is alive today and making really beautiful work? And so I started now, actually like about 2 years ago, which is kind of crazy. And I launched something that I refer to now as kind of the Erria directory. So I started to put together kind of this database of studios organized by location and by what they make. And I launched that in August of 2023. But I would say that even at the time, my aspirations were always bigger. And I always knew that I wanted to find a way to build this into a really robust platform, into an amazing marketplace where you could actually very easily and seamlessly connect with these people, these amazing makers, and buy their work. And I didn't really know how to do that. And I knew that I needed someone technical, and I knew that there was this kind of like technology piece that was missing, that really needed to exist for the kind of company that I wanted to build. And I mean, honestly, for the majority of the last 2 years, I've kind of slowly, people have known that I've been looking for this person. But at the beginning of this year, I decided to kind of put it out into the world. And that's how I met Jen. We met through a mutual friend of ours. So I went to RISD, Jen went to Brown. For people who don't know, RISD and Brown are two universities that are located on the same hillside in the same city, which is Providence, Rhode Island. And we have a friend that connected us at the beginning of this year when he found out that, I was looking for my kind of technical other half. And that's how we met. And for the majority of this year now, we've been working together to really build the platform that I believe deserves to exist in this industry and in this space. And, the way that I talk about it now, especially as I've been having kind of the initial onboarding calls with makers onto the new platform, is if you imagine First Dibs as being the platform that is, the standard platform for the industry to source vintage and antique work, I would love to build the platform that becomes the standard for sourcing new and contemporary. And so I think that means anything from, a hand-thrown ceramic platter to, one-of-a-kind furniture pieces, and really finding a way to make all those things exist in one place online.
That's right.
Anything you guys would add?
No.
That's the story.
So maybe before we jump into the history of Erria, Jen, why don't you tell us your history a little bit so that we can understand contextually your history from Brown, what your life has been like, what things you've done. Because you're,
Yeah, for
you're a
sure.
hacker. You're a hacker.
I am
at
a
heart.
hacker, yes.
Yeah.
Well, I think also from a young age, I knew that I wanted to start my own company. I had watched my dad start his own thing. He has a real estate business. My grandfather was in like the textiles industry, which is actually really interesting because now I'm obsessed with textiles. But the main thing, ever since I was little, I've always loved building things and playing with things. I had 4 older brothers, so I played with a lot of Legos growing up, and I think that's kind of where everything started. I was really lucky to go to a private school that had this robotics class in 7th grade, and I think that was my very first time ever experiencing any type of coding. And it was with Legos. It was this really cool, I forget what it was called, but it was very cool. And you just play with Legos and essentially code them using Scratch, which is like a UI editor that lets you do things with this robot. And then it was just such a crazy moment to be like, whoa, I can use my computer and I can say, do this thing. And then you actually see this little robot moving around. And that was kind of where it started. And then another big thing was actually Walt Disney World. I grew up going every single year and I became obsessed with animatronics. Like so obsessed that I would like memorize every moment of a ride at Disney World and just try to understand like how is this working? Like how do they create? It was a perfect blend of art, tech, and just like imagination and like creating these moments of joy for people. Like I just remember the first time that I would see like any new animatronic. It still happens today, like with their new ones. I'm so excited to go see it, and it's just like such a moment that makes me be like, wow, this is possible. And I think I knew I always wanted to build things. I went into Brown immediately picking my major, which is kind of funny because Brown is notorious for having an open curriculum where you can explore. I did not explore at all. I went and picked computer engineering, which was a major with 10 people in the School of Engineering, where the first couple of years you do an engineering core and you take a bunch of classes that are like mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, and I also took a bunch of computer science classes. And a lot of the initial computer science classes are like not that engaging and are very theoretical. So I didn't really understand that I was obsessed with it until I took a class where I was building products. I think the first thing, I'm trying to think of the first thing I built was probably this. It was my it was a project in engineering design, and I built it was called the super sauce, and it was a hot plate mixed with a hand mixer or a standing mixer. So like
Mhm.
imagine like a hot plate and then a stand mixer behind it, and then we took it apart. It was like a group project, and we took it apart, hacked the electronics in it to make them essentially one unit. And then I built the connection, which was a mobile app that you could press a button and like save recipes and be like, I'm making hollandaise sauce was like our main thing that we wanted to make, where all you did was like press a button and you get hollandaise sauce out. So like that
Mm.
was my first thing where I was like, whoa, I could like, I'm building something. I was always interested in like the hardware and software. And then after school, I did some hardware things. I worked for an engineering firm in Providence while I was getting my master's in machine learning and human computer interaction. Um,
Oh, wow.
and during that time, I was just building like as many things as possible. I was working with some startups that were coming out of Brown and building their MVPs. My main goal for the first couple of years of my career was learn as much as I possibly could about how to build products end to end, from like design, from understanding how like what to build, that's what I realize now is like the really hard part. But I think for the first couple of years, it was all like, how do I do this? Because like you didn't have Cursor, you didn't have AI generated code. You're building everything from scratch. And there's a lot of things to learn. So like that was kind of my first couple of years. I then joined a startup after I graduated from my master's called Studio, which was founded at Brown. And they were on a crazy rocket ship growth trajectory where they were valued at $1 billion plus. They raised like
Wow.
$60 million. It was a masterclass competitor. So online creative classes taught by world best creators. So they had like a Christina Tosi class for baking,
Mhm.
Kygo for music. And that was a really interesting experience where I was working with a bunch of young people that like we totally were brainwashed into believing that like this is the future and we're so passionate about it. But then you see this disconnect where you have all these very creative people that would want to take these classes and they're not using our platform. Like I was not using the platform, even though I am like the target user. I love to learn things, bake, cook, do things with my hands, and I wasn't using it. And it took off during the pandemic because it totally had product market fit, where you have 30 days of super intensive classes that are taught by these creators. Everyone's sitting at home. They want to get creative and learn things. So it took off during that time, and then it kind of crashed and burned after the pandemic. And there was like 45% layoffs, and I stayed on, and I was like, we're on a sinking ship, and you could just feel it. It's like
Yeah.
such a crazy feeling from going from like, we're on top of the world, we're these young people building the future, and then it all just is like almost, it like disappears. And then you take a step back and you're like, wait, especially me as an engineer, I was in a stage of thinking we're in this like growth phase where we need to make sure that this hacky code base is a really nicely written, really maintainable code base, because we went from 10 engineers to 45 in 6 months. When you add that many people pushing code, everything started breaking. Everything's just like falling apart. So like my main goal, I was like thinking about the infrastructure, but I didn't realize that we were on this sinking ship and we needed to focus on product and like figuring out what to build. So that was super interesting. I learned a ton. I then joined a super small startup that went through YC called Craniometrics. And
Wait. Tell people what YC is. It's
Y Combinator is it's
Sam Altman's.
probably it's the most famous startup incubator in the world.
Airbnb fame.
Airbnb. There's a lot of companies
Dropbox. I mean,
Dropbox. Yeah, a lot of fame. Okay, so YC is a big
it's
deal,
kind of
guys.
the place if you're trying to start a venture scale company. It's probably like the best place to start. Just
cool.
based on network and everything, all the resources that you get. So I joined without really thinking much about it because I was just like, I need to get out of here.
Mhm.
And I joined. I was like employee number one. I was working directly with the CEO who went to Yale. He was like 23 at the time. And the main reason, so when I first joined, it was diagnostics for Alzheimer's. And my grandmother
Oh,
had passed away from Alzheimer's when I was like 13. My brother had suffered a severe traumatic brain injury, and he has a high chance of getting Alzheimer's at some point. So I was really interested in brain health at this point in my life. And I just graduated from this ML master's. I wanted to use it in the real world. It was like supposed to be like all about machine learning. I didn't really understand what was coming in terms of AI, but I did know, like I had seen LLMs. Like one of my class projects I remember in my master's was like making your own little LLM, and it's like they
oh,
were
cool.
bad. Like when you don't have that much data, it was bad. So you play around with all these different transformer architectures, whatever it is, like it just wasn't good at the time. So I didn't totally understand this craziness that is today of AI. But I did know that it was gonna just get better and better. Like you could sense at that point, and after like reading the Transformers paper that came out in 2017 by Google, that was basically like, this is the architecture to use. And if you just keep throwing more data at it, bigger models will give you better output. That was kind of what they said, but like we hadn't really seen it yet. And this was like 2020, 2021 that I was in my master's. So then when I was a founding engineer at this company, a couple months in, I was building a bunch of prototypes. We didn't really know what we were doing, which happens at startups. We got into the space. He had like raised $6 million. So it was just me and him, $6 million and like a general thesis. And trying to think how to it didn't go as planned in a lot of ways.
Okay.
Um
Another
I
sinking
mean, it's
ship or what?
hard. It's not just a sinking ship. Like that was the first time where I'm basically building something from nothing. Like I thought
Okay.
I had done that a bunch of times for little side projects. But it is very different when you're trying to like start a real company. It's like it's a lot. And a lot of things have to be right. You have to have the right idea. You have to be working with the right people that you
Mhm.
really deeply trust, get along with, can work well with, respect. Like everything has to be in place. And there were just a bunch of things that weren't in place and weren't aligned from what I wanted to do with my life. Another thing is like it's very hard when you're building something from scratch. You have to deeply be obsessed with the problem. And it was really hard for me to do that in this space too, because it's sad to think about death all the time.
Yeah.
There's no real solution to this problem. And like diagnostics also completely changed. There's now a blood test, which like was just about to be approved at this time. So that the diagnostics we pivoted away from immediately, and then we became, right when ChatGPT came out, we became like Care GPT for Alzheimer's
Yeah.
caregivers, which essentially was you take this assessment and you track the progress of your caregiver over time, or if you're the person that you're caregiving for over time, and we provide recommendations for you from the very first API that OpenAI released, or it may not have been the very first, but it was like the very first after ChatGPT and after everyone kind of knew about it. And it was like very not reliable at that time. No one really knew how to use these things. A lot of people were not using them in production. So I was like very thankful that I had this job where my entire job was to figure out what these are useful for and how to use LLMs and how to create like this infrastructure in place where like we wanted to surface YouTube videos. It's not going to spit out a working YouTube link. You have to have it spit out like a search term and then integrate with the YouTube API to actually get the video. Like things like that. It was just like there was a lot of hallucinations. It was like not very good. But yeah, so it was an interesting problem, just like not the right situation for me at that time. So, but I knew that the next thing I wanted to do was start my own thing. Then I quit, took some time to just like figure out what I wanted to do. I ran 7 marathons in my year with my brother, the one who had the brain injury. He got hit by a car training for the 2018 New York Marathon. And then right when he woke up from the coma, he instantly wanted to run the marathon and finish what he started. So we ran it together in 2019 at like 6-hour pace. And then now he's running like 3-hour 50 marathons and is like crushing it and is amazing. But I did a lot of knitting. I was building a billion apps. I think I probably explored and built little prototypes for like 100 ideas over a year. And then I joined, one of them was like an AI storybook app where I like had this co-founder, and then that didn't work out for a number of reasons. It's like, you really have to, I think the hardest thing is finding the person that you want to build this company with. That is the thing that is the hardest thing ever. There's like YC, the Y Combinator that I mentioned before, has like essentially Tinder for finding co-founders. And I was on that all the time. I met with people constantly, like 100 plus coffee dates. I had a whole system where I then like just had 15-minute calls because I knew, I was like, I'm not going to go into Manhattan every time I want to see if I want to work with someone. Like, you can tell so quickly. It's like dating. It's like very similar to dating because I spend more time with Alyssa than my partner Luke, for sure. He's also a founder, but he says it all the time. He's like, hey, like, can I have my girlfriend back for a second? But it's like, you're spending so much time with this person and you have to trust them, and you're going through like a roller coaster all the time of things going wrong and existential threat. And
when did Alyssa come into your life, essentially?
So I went through, go ahead.
You tell your side of the story first.
Well, I went through this thing called South Park Commons, and it's like a kind of like a startup incubator too. And I like did a more formal like exploration of ideas. I ended up starting my own company called Travoya, which was a trip planning app using AI. So like if you think about where the world's going with agents on the internet for you, can you have a end-to-end trip planning platform that can do everything for you, like whether it's calling up a restaurant in Japanese and booking that like omakase place that only takes reservations by phone and like dictating all these tasks. It was a really interesting problem to solve, but one, I couldn't find a co-founder that I wanted to build with someone. It's a really hard problem. I didn't want to raise VC money because I didn't want to limit the type of business that I wanted to build, which could have been a small sustainable thing. Like, I don't know if you know, like Wanderlog or TripIt are like kind of competitors. They're like not venture scale, like $1 billion+ businesses, but they are definitely sustainable, have a niche, and are interesting. So for a number of reasons, I wasn't building the thing that I really wanted to use, and I was getting really frustrated. I was having a lot of doubts. The market is so saturated. It's really hard to monetize that problem. And the agents are not good yet too. And I kept waiting. I was like, they're going to get better. It's going to get better. And like, it will, but it's like, it takes longer than you think. You always overestimate how fast tech is really going to advance things. So I was like, let me take a break from this and work on this knitting app. So I switched gears kind of. I was like thinking about knitting a lot. I was thinking about just handcrafting things and slow made goods in a way. It was like almost so perfect timing. And that's when I saw Gordon post Alyssa's post about trying to find this technical partner to build Erria. And I had already been following Erria, weirdly, on Instagram. And I reached out to Gordon. He introduced us, and I think we had a call, and we just kind of started dating.
And what's funny is like the first call that I did was just like kind of a general vibe check, you know, tell me about the job, whatever, like a general interview. And as Fernando, you probably know, like I like 4 months earlier had started knitting myself. And I mean, Jen's been knitting her whole life. And then the second call that I would do with kind of people who applied for the engineering role that I posted is I would have them walk me through a project that they were working on. And Jen walked me through this like AI powered like you could take like a knitting pattern, an image of a knitting pattern, and then with AI you could pinpoint the colors and then change the colors of the pattern so you can visualize what the knitting pattern would look like in the color of yarn that you wanted to use. And so it was just this interesting intersection of like 6 months earlier, I actually like would have no idea what she was talking about, showing me this, like this knitting app that she was working on. And what also then ended up happening is like, I live in LA, Jen lives in New York, is probably a week after that call, I was going to New York for the next 6 weeks to work on the Lyle exhibition. And so it was just like, the timing worked out that maybe the third day that I was in New York, Jen came to the gallery, started like sewing some curtains together and like helping with the logistics of putting that show together. And we really had that time to kind of, get to know each other and do that co-founder dating. And I remember like I went over to Jen's place and she made me dinner, and it really did feel that way. And, asking all kinds of questions. And I remember I printed out this questionnaire. We didn't even go through it that much, but there's like this co-founder questionnaire you can find, maybe even through Y Combinator or something similar, where they like, it's 100 questions they recommend that you ask. And it's everything from, tell me about your family, tell me about your life goals, tell me about your like mental health history. And like this really, I don't know, this way of like, yeah, we spend, I don't know, 60 hours a week, like on a call with each other. And I feel like even through a screen, like over the last, 4 or 5 months, like I can tell like how Jen is sort of feeling based on like the first like 3 words that she says. And you do like really get to know someone in a super intimate way. And yeah, so I guess while I was in New York, by the end of those 6 weeks, I left New York like April 22nd. I think April 7th, we kind of, had our paperwork in progress, or like, we had my lawyers, Jen's lawyers, like looking through the co-founder agreements, doing like, deciding on equity, doing the share transfers. And so I guess it took us maybe like 5 weeks or so to get to the point where, we both, I think, felt comfortable like putting things on paper. Yeah.
I mean,
But I
so
think it felt like, I
yeah.
mean, just from my side, I feel like meeting Jen to me felt like such a breath of fresh air, maybe in the same way that it feels like when you do meet a romantic partner where you're like, oh, this is clicking in a way that other things like haven't clicked for me.
So Jen, a little bit, because like when you were talking about all the things you've done, right? All of those things
Mm.
sound like big potential money. I mean, you went from $1 billion company with $60 million raise to then $6 million raise to then this is smaller, obviously, and it's a much more niche product. So how did you get yourself to say, okay, wait a second, like out of all the big things you could have gone to do, right? And I'm not saying that Erria is not big. Like in our world, we're like, this is going to be big, right? But for
This
you
is
to like, um, how was that for you? Or what was your thinking about it? To be able to say, yeah, I'm going to kind of dedicate a portion of your younger life now to this company.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think what I learned at studio is that the amount of money you raise, the valuation you have on paper, it's all a game. It doesn't matter. Nothing matters except for providing value. If you're not creating value in the world, you don't have anything.
Hmm.
So I think I learned that pretty early on. And then I feel like SPC, South Park Commons, where I spent like 8 months going into that office, like going through curriculums where you're like understanding how to think about starting a company and where do you start in this maze of like ideas, and how do you validate whether or not those ideas could work or could not work. And like I was just getting so it all felt so fake. I'm like, this is not going to work. Like, there's no algorithm for creating something of value. You need
Mhm.
to understand a problem. You need to be able to reach those people that have the problem, that care about the problem, that want it solved. And I think what I saw in Alyssa, there's obviously a lot of things, like we just instantly got along, but it was way more than that too. It's like she had this mission-driven idea that she deeply understood, that she already had been building this network of makers who were very interested in seeing this in the world for a year and a half, and like building an Instagram, a community around Erria. And I also love the idea. Like, I was at a point in my life where I was like,
Mhm.
I love real world things. Like, I think that it's so
Yeah.
interesting because I was building so many AI things. Like, everything is AI. And I think, like, at the point that I was in that journey, I was thinking about how can you apply AI to knitting, which is like a very real world thing, a very slow thing. And I just kept thinking, like, the real moat that you can build in companies is like, you need to have this unique inventory. Like, everyone kept saying that with Travoya too, with travel. It's like, you have to sell a unique thing, and you have to have that be your thing that you're selling, or like you have to have those makers want to sell with you. So I think it was a little bit of that. I think, like, the main thing is, if you think about where this could go to, like, yes, we're starting in this very small niche of design, collectible design, higher end pieces. I don't know where we're going to go, but like, I would love to buy all new ceramic handmade plates. Like, where would I do that? I don't
Mm.
know. I think
Right.
that there is a gap in the market from the consumer side that I instantly connected with,
Mm.
that I would want to buy. Like, you don't even think about. I think also, as I'm getting older, like, I'm starting to think about where did all of the things come from that I interact with every
Yeah.
day? Like, I think this is in so many different parts of my life. Like, I love gardening and plants. And I've been taking like classes at the Brooklyn Botanic Garden because I'm like absolutely obsessed with it, want to have a farm someday. And just thinking about where, when I go to the grocery store, like, where does that food come from? So like this,
Mhm.
I was just like
Yep.
thinking about these types of things constantly. And then it's like, oh yeah, like, where did this desk from Wayfair come from? And like, am I living with, like, what are the objects that I'm living with? Like, all of this really resonated with me, especially coming from a house. My dad is a complete hoarder. Sorry if you're listening. but I grew up in a crazy house that was just so full of stuff, that like a
Mhm.
ridiculous amount of stuff, and all of
Yeah.
it was so like meaningless in a way. Like, he would say that it
Yeah.
all has meaning and a story, and I'm sure it
Right.
does, but like, it's just, I'm trying, and I realized that I was kind of doing that too. Like, I have a lot of stuff too, and I'm just getting more conscious about like, what are the things that I want to keep and that I want to live with. And that whole thing just like really resonated with me. And then you just think about like, who do I want to spend hours and hours of my life, like years of my life working with? That's super important to me. And that just felt totally right. I did have some hesitation and doubts about the market size and all these things. It's like, I had built like a bunch of people who are investors who I was talking about ideas with before this, and I run the idea by them, and they're like, you're gonna work on like what? Like, they're
Right.
like, that's not technically complex enough, like, in like this AI bubble and like crazy revolution, like, you're gonna work on something that's like a very human thing. And I was like, exactly,
Mm.
like, that makes so much sense to me after spending so much time where you have all, if you think about the world and what's being put out there, you have all this AI generated slop that's going to flood the internet. I think that there's going to be a big shift towards valuing human creation, creativity, makers in the world
Every
because of this. So
1000%.
like, and it's like seeing into the future almost, of like, this is important, and it's
Yep.
going to be even more valuable than ever before because you're
That's right.
not going to have quality. And so it just made sense to me.
I was just listening to Eric Weinstein talk about this, and every day that I hear people talking about AI and this, I feel more and more secure as a career in the arts. I'm like,
Mm.
wow, the fact that I still know how to make things with my hands, that is going to be the biggest value that people, that people are going to seek out. They're going to be like, oh, that's still made by a human. Yeah, we want that. And so, yeah, no, I totally
Yeah.
agree with you on that. Well, we need
I
to
think
go into
it'll be one of the things that takes
yeah.
the longest, if not nearly impossible for technology, for AI to gain the like material knowledge that like human
Mm,
hands carry. And like, I at what point will a computer like have fingertips and be able to understand what, different like moisture content of clay
mm,
feels like, or to understand why touching something that is like 100% cotton versus like 100% polyester, like what that does like to the feeling that you have like
mhm.
as a human in the world. And I yeah, I don't know when technology will get there, if ever, and it probably will, but I think that will be the things that takes one of the longest amounts of time.
We got to get into the belly of the beast here and talk about Area, the product, the platform, the guts of what you guys are building and why and how it's going to be
Mm,
used and why people need to immediately go and sign up and and join the platform and what the benefits
yeah.
that they're going to get because obviously our audience is mostly young designers. We're literally building this thing for them.
Mm.
Area is for them. And so, yeah, let's talk about what Area is going to do and how they're going to benefit from this platform.
Well, I think kind of one of the what? Why are you
No,
laughing?
I just like you're like, well,
Well, that's like one of the biggest questions, right?
correct.
And it's definitely also, I think, one of the hardest questions to answer because it has so many layers. And I think that's where a lot of the nuance of the product lies that we're still, actively trying to figure out. Like, yes, where it started, where the whole idea started. And, Fernando, what we talk a lot about is like, number one, visibility in sales. And what does it actually mean to build a platform that for a certain percentage of its users generates that, outcome consistently? And, something that, we think about from like a technology perspective is like, how can you have the best kind of search? And so is that, so for example, our search will be like AI powered. And what does it mean when you can get really granular in what you're looking for, in where you're looking for things? So you can search by location, you can search by availability, but, kind of fundamentally taking out, I guess, that aspect of it is like thinking about what it takes to build a platform that is really maker friendly. So, for example, we've gotten really into the weeds of trying to understand what the different types of products people kind of carry and, structures of products that they have, whether something is like one of a kind, whether something comes in 10 different finishes and fabric types, how to be very clear about communicating that, creating sort of like trying to figure out how to create a semi-standardized system. So then when a buyer is coming on the platform, when an interior designer comes on and they're saying, okay, I need a side table. This is the budget that I have for that side table. Maybe lead time doesn't matter. Maybe the color matters. Maybe you want to upload a picture of the couch that it's going to stand next to. And I think that there's a lot of value in creating a standardized system that then the buyers can work within. And then also sort of like balancing that standardization with flexibility. So thinking about how a lot of these transactions require a level of communication first or require a level of customization. So on platform, you can generate totally custom invoices, whether someone wants to buy 10 of something and you want to offer them kind of a bulk discount, whether someone wants to customize the size. And I do believe that, a lot of the platforms that exist like for this category of object or for this category of maker have never taken into consideration this level of detail into how the process of making something actually works. And so then I think when you land on another platform and you see this piece, but you actually don't really even understand how long it's going to take to get to you, you don't understand the materials that it can be made out of. I think that that just creates so much friction in the like buyer process that people eventually kind of give up on it. And yeah, I mean, that's what I would say. And then, we're still definitely working through the kind of go to market and building out the buyer demand. But, that will be my focus, like for the foreseeable future is really to figure out how, yeah, like I said at the beginning, like how to build this into the standard sourcing platform for the industry and what an interior designer, what someone doing FF&E procurement actually needs to see in order to do their work as efficiently and as seamlessly as possible in a way that enables them to then support these independent makers versus saying, okay, yeah, I have these parameters, but it takes too much time to go to each of these independent makers' individual websites. And so they just take,
Yeah.
I'm going to go to RH or I'm going to go to First Dibs or, these places that are really easy to search through.
All right. So if I'm a young designer and I'm fresh out, like I'm like 2 years out of school, I have my website, I've got my some products, I'm building out my collections and things like this. How is my experience of getting into Erria, or how to like I want to join? What is it like? What am I going to get?
Well, I mean, the process is that on the website you first have to apply to sell. So something that um is really important to me, and that I think, sort of Jen touched on this, is your inventory is, I think, one of the only true differentiators that you have, especially as a young company. And so for me, like, I am super like unwavering on this like aspect of, I don't like to call it curation because I think curation is something a little bit more specific in terms of how, objects work with each other. But in terms of selecting makers, designers, creative small businesses that care really deeply about the work that they're making and taking it seriously. So, I would say that for the time being, like Erria is not a platform for like hobbyist crafts people and is more for people who would like to pursue this kind of career, let's say like full time or like almost full time. And so a lot of the way that I think that's reflected is also the way that you communicate about yourself, the way you photograph your work. Like we will sort of maintain a pretty high standard for that. So you apply to sell. The application, I mean, these days is all I think I really need to see is your Instagram or your website. So there's nothing really beyond that. Um, and then once you're approved, you kind of set up, we call them storefronts. So you set up your storefront, you upload your inventory, and I think that's like, I mean, in the end, like it's a marketplace and we're selling things. And I think it's
Right.
not there at this point, there isn't too much more complexity with
Is
that.
there, but what's the subscriber fee going to look like, or what are your thoughts around that, or how do they generate, you know, um,
It'll be $300 a year, kind of base. And then the commission that we take as a platform is 15%, which is, I'd say like pretty competitive compared to the other platforms.
yeah, very much so.
Mhm.
And so, okay, and then they join, they put their inventory, and then they hope they start to get the visibility that we're talking about through the site. Um, how a lot of these platforms, you never know how they aggregate, and this might be a question for Jen, but like, how are people going to feel like their stuff is being seen, and how do you guys? Is that something that you guys are building into it, where um, there's a randomness to it? Is it based on, as people start to search, it's like, oh, they're interested in this stuff. It starts to bring their stuff. How are you guys thinking about that? Because like as a designer, like I'm on First Dibs. I have no idea where my stuff comes up. when people search First
Mhm.
Dibs. And I know that in First Dibs case, it's a pay to play where, if I pay more, my stuff gets aggregated to the front pages. How are you guys thinking about that stuff?
It's definitely early in terms of understanding exactly what we're gonna do for that,
Mm.
because one of the main things to keep in mind is First Dibs has over 1 million things that they're selling. So as the amount of listings goes up, you run into this problem. I think that the main thing that I'm thinking about from a technical standpoint is how can we collect as much information about these pieces that's not just, we obviously are collecting like weight, dimensions, like all these different things that the maker is inputting. They're able to like have their materials, all the materials that they work with, and easily be able to upload. Like right now we're kind of focusing on making that upload flow as seamless as possible while also collecting as much data as possible about these pieces. And then given all that data that the maker is uploading about a product, we run all of that information through a model. Right now we're using GPT 4.0, and essentially have it describe what this piece is in very robust language that this is what we mean by like AI powered search. I don't know exactly if I'm doing it in the most perfect way because there's no like real established way to do this yet in a way that gets the best matches for what you're looking for. But the idea here is like if you're searching for, like, I want a table that goes next to this chair, and you upload a picture of the chair, can you use the power of AI to understand what they're looking for instead of relying just on what they're typing into a search box or giving you information? Like, can you augment that intent
Wow.
to get
Mm.
back what you're looking for? But another thing to keep in mind is like people don't always know what they're looking for. And like you do want to have that discovery aspect of it, that randomness, that like let's like show products that are similar. Let's like understand their taste profile over time and try to surface things that they would want based on what they're looking at, which like is obviously like what most things are doing. Like TikTok, it's like what you're
Mhm.
spending time watching is what you're going to see more of. And
Mhm.
it's a whole different algorithm that's changing constantly. And like that is probably the hardest thing about what we're going to build, is doing that really well. And it's going to take time and
Mm.
iteration and playing
Right.
around with things and trying things, like maybe let's show them this thing and see what happens. But it's like, it's just, you need to start building out that infrastructure of understanding the data that you have really well and making sure you have as much information about the piece as possible. But
You
yeah,
know,
and
something that I say uh, a lot right now, like in the initial maker onboarding, is kind of, we've learned through some of our conversations with folks at First Dibs that the majority of people land on the First Dibs website through a very targeted Google search. So maybe you're saying, I'm looking for, a black Eames lounge chair from 1975. And then it takes you to the First Dibs listing for either that piece or something that's like really, really similar to what you've searched for. But for this category of object, I think the process of finding them is totally different because you often don't even know that these things or these people exist. And so, it is like a challenge where, like, how do you show people how, if someone is searching for, okay, I'm looking for a side table under $2,000, like, how do you then understand, even maybe like more from like a material or like aesthetic perspective, how to show them these objects that are so individual and so unique and are honestly nothing like what most people even like expect that exists in the world. And I'm curious to see what we'll kind of learn from, yeah, people's like search patterns and what resonates with them. And um yeah.
So what can the buyers expect when they're on the platform?
In terms of uh, the actual design of the platform, it's thinking a lot about, how to facilitate that discovery process. So the homepage is going to look more similar to something like Pinterest rather than, Crate and Barrel's website. So breaking out of just that, traditional kind of e-commerce structure. You can also search by location. So what that means
This is exciting. Yeah.
actually is like you can see a map, and you can see a map of makers, a map of objects. And I'm really curious. I sort of feel like it'll be a feature that gets people really hooked. But also thinking about, if you are in the market for a dining table, which like Jen and I were discussing logistics all morning today, which we can talk about too, is if you're, want to buy a dining table, and like a handmade dining table is going to be very expensive. Let's say maybe it would start like the least expensive one you could find is maybe like $3,000, but like going anywhere up to, $20,000 plus. Let's say you do find a dining table for, $3,000 to $4,000. Shipping a piece like that from across the country might cost you half that price, if not even more. But what does it mean? What could it mean from, it's like a totally different e-commerce pattern, even to be able to offer to buy pieces like that are local to you.
Mhm.
In addition to whatever effects it might have on just like general community building. But from a logistics perspective, I think that will be a huge value add as well. And then, I think those are kind of the two main, buyer experience, but you can connect directly with the maker. So something that is, again, like maybe in terms of the values that are really important to us is like full transparency, no obfuscating identities.
Mhm.
And it is a risk because, you know, you're essentially not keeping anyone from going off platform and just, reaching out to that maker directly. I think that if you are having, a huge amount, let's say like more than 50% of people going off platform, your platform probably has a larger issue than the transparency, whether that's, the fees, whether that's the way that, the product is actually working. But I believe that, especially in order to keep transactions on platform, there has to be enough value added for, at least one side to want to keep that transaction on platform, whether that's like, we are an amazing customer service partner to either side, whether, we offer something to the makers in terms of tracking their sales, tracking their analytics, maybe taking, eventually doing all of their invoicing where it just like they want to be on platform versus, in their email inboxes. But yeah, and then hopefully like eventually end-to-end logistics. I mean,
Yeah.
it's very, very challenging for this space. So we'll see.
And maybe talk a little bit about data and visibility for the designers as well. There's going to be a feature where people will be able to understand like what side table that there is getting the most traction, or in terms of views and things like this, right? I mean, you're going to give some visibility to the designers, and I mean the makers, let's call them, because the designers can be the interior designers, but the makers will have visibility into what's hot on their site, or on their storefront, right? You'll be able to see those types of things.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. So, along with tracking and getting as much data as we can about products, like we also want to understand in a private way
Mhm.
how users are interacting with the products that you're uploading. Because our main goal is to try to help these makers and designers have a stable income, be able to do what they love, focus only on making and creating, and we handle the rest. Like, that's the ideal end state. And yeah, I mean, I think part of that is if you have all of this, if you can get a lot of people on the platform clicking around, doing things like you do, and also transacting, you get some market intelligence on like what is
Mm.
happening in this space. If you do become that platform that is the place to buy this type of object. So I think that's really valuable for the makers. And I think that it's a whole process of like you're putting something out in the world and you're just hoping that there's buyers for it. And that's expensive and hard to do. And it's hard to iterate on things. And it's like, how can we make that as seamless as possible and provide as much value to the makers as we can. So we're definitely keeping that in mind. It's going to take a little bit, obviously, to we need to get the people
Right.
clicking around on there. We need to get all this data in order to surface it. But the first step is collecting it and understanding it. So, yeah.
I've always loved, we've been talking about this for a long time, but, parts of the things that I love about it is that I love that it is maker focused. I see so many young designers struggle with all of these things, and I love that Area is, slowly but surely going to try to resolve all of those issues for how you get visibility in a digital way without having to do a trade fair. The cost of entry is not as high as these other avenues. Um, because I remember when I first started, even invoicing was hard. Like I didn't like it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't like I had it all set up. I mean, I was an artist, so invoicing, being able to communicate directly with your client on a platform in a seamless way. All these things, so because I
I
really
mean, I
want
do
people.
think there's
Yeah,
actually something that comes to mind when you sort of were bringing in the archetype of, okay, let's say you've been working, you're 2 years out of school and you have some pieces,
yeah,
you know, creating a profile on Area means that you don't need anything except a Stripe account in order to start
beautiful.
processing sales. So,
That's amazing.
we can handle the invoicing, hopefully support with shipping and logistics. And it's even I talked to this amazing studio called Realm based out of Baltimore. And I believe they started I think they said 2023 or so. Their work is unbelievable. But even the things in terms of that we already can support with product upload and inventory, they said to me, they're like, maybe we should just not have our own website. Like maybe this is the place where
Right.
where we can, handle transactions. And I feel like that is the goal, is to get to a place where, especially at the beginning, Area is the place where that work is initially listed, because we kind of can offer something a little bit more full
Yeah, and I think
service.
that the lower commission structure, which I really hope that we can stick to that, will be a try. I would not mind even today. I have to pay let's say I work with a consultant. That's a standard 20% fee. That's obviously much lower than a 50% gallery fee. But 15 is like a very attractive number because if you feel like you're getting value, you feel like you have all of these you're getting data, you're getting invoicing, you're getting communication with clients. I mean, 15% seems like a reasonable, fee to provide. So I think in that way, people will want to stay on the platform, and use it from start to finish. And I think even, I'm going to have my stuff on there. We've talked about this. I think it's important for me to have some of my product line on there. And, I think it's like, if I had had something like this when I was first starting, I would have been like, "This is cool. This is great." And it feels
Mm.
like it's centered on us, the makers, and not on, I'm sorry, but like First Dibs, Adorno, the other brands out there are for them. They're on their end trying to make the money, which I get. In this case, it feels like, "Hey, let's build something for you guys,
Mm.
and yes, we need to generate revenue for the platform," but it doesn't feel, like, predatory or aggressive, you know what I mean? Every time that you're on these other platforms, it constantly starts to feel like the fees constantly going up, the commission structure changes, they're sending you new it's like the and you
And
constantly
then
feel like.
people and Jen and I have a lot of conversations about this now, like, oh, how much time are we focusing on, the marketplace has two sides. It has the makers and it has the buyers. And we've been focusing a lot on the makers.
Yeah,
And, we do have to kind of balance that focus out. But, one of my main hypotheses going into this business in general was the amount of people that I hear from all these conversations that I'm having, either leaving other platforms, not wanting to work with them anymore, not even not having a follow-up call with whoever their, salesperson or contact person was. And that once you lose that trust of whoever your suppliers are and whoever are the ones bringing that value through that unique inventory, like I do I do just like have this conviction that in order for a marketplace in this space to really thrive and exist and like attract also those buyers, you have to figure out how to like hold on to your inventory as tightly as possible.
Yeah. So where are you today? What can we expect? What can people expect coming up? You said you were onboarding. So what does that mean? And can we get on this platform and start selling stuff?
It's a great question. Um,
Man,
Like,
it's
I
don't know.
I
mean,
feel like
it's hard.
yeah.
Okay.
We're
Yeah,
two
just tell
people.
us where
It's
you're
been
at.
3
Yeah.
months of
Correct.
development so far. And one, I thought it would be, I mean, okay, this always happens. Like you always think things are faster than they're gonna be. But we do have the majority of the platform is there working and we're collecting the data. Like we're still touching up like little UI UX things, trying to make the experience really nice. And I think both of us like to make things perfect and beautiful, and that's always been my problem, and it's always hard, and it's so much easier. What I've learned is like when you're an engineer working at a company and it's not your company, it's so much easier to just throw it out in the world and be like, let's see what happens. And it feels so much more personal and so much more vulnerable to put it out when it's yours. And like, especially in this case, like I've built like I've written all of the code with the help of AI, obviously, because I'm like everyone using Cursor. And if you're not, that's weird. But I don't know. It's just like, it's going to take a little bit to get it to the point where like, as a consumer, you are in there like shopping around. Because
Correct.
one, like we want to strategically go to market. Like we don't want to just release it in the world when it's half baked and not in a great place. But right now, like we have been focusing heavily on the maker side of things. How do you make this product upload work very well? Like we have one maker has a product with 125 variants. What does that mean in terms of uploading like that product, and like how is that surfaced to a user in a way that makes sense and doesn't feel messy and isn't confusing, and you can personalize it? Like the big problem with this space is that back and forth of like, what about then this would, how much is it for this? Like what would this cost? Like, can you kind of front load that on the maker who has either made these things before, has an idea? It doesn't have to be a perfect idea of like how much exactly this thing will cost or how long it will take, but like, can we get that information up front so that you can have end-to-end just checkout and logistics and check out with one click and get exactly what you want and understand what you're getting and what it looks like? And that is more complicated than expected just because of the nature of the product and how customizable they are and how many different products that we're going to have.
Like I didn't even tell you this, but yesterday I was like finishing up some of this manual onboarding that we've been doing, and I found there's a studio that they don't have dimensions because everything is a custom dimension.
Wow.
And it's just like how the hell like do you communicate that? Because the thing is like one of the, and I don't know, there's so many of these like little cases that we won't be able to fully accommodate from the beginning. And I actually think that maybe I've been thinking a lot about this, like can AI or and some other technology down the road actually really, really help with all of these like individual cases and understanding that, okay, if something is like the dimension is totally up to you, is there, is there what do you call it? A formula for how you calculate the price of that? If someone is searching for, a table that's exactly like 48 inches, but your dimensions are all customizable, how is that actually surfaced to the buyer that your piece can be made in the exact size if you're not actually putting a number in the size? And right now we don't, that's like a very particular thing that we don't have a way of accommodating for that. So it'll be like a conversation with that studio and figuring out how we want to do that. But
But it also seems like once you resolve that, right, that'll live on the you'll
but
have
it
it
is,
resolved into the
Fern, it is
future too.
so many
Is it?
cases to
Yeah.
resolve. I
I mean,
think
I
that
always talk to you guys about, like, I sell
yeah.
stuff made out of salt and sand and like that. Those are not common materials. So that'll eventually be on the
Yeah.
platform and people will be able to search sand and, find other
But I
stuff
think a
that,
lot of the
yeah,
question
right.
is even like, yes, we want to surface those materials, but it's also a lot of getting into the buyer's mindset. And
Yeah.
is like, it's
Right.
important for you to show your material, but if we're being really realistic, like, is somebody actually going and searching for sand?
No. No.
Probably
No,
not.
yeah.
And they're probably,
No, but
your
if they
work should
find
be
a sand
surfaced.
object, they might then
They
be like,
might want to
"Oh,
see
interesting,
other
sand."
ones. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, and
Yeah.
they'll
But another thing
right.
too that I think is really interesting is understanding what that means to work with sand. A lot of people, like, instantly what that means.
Right.
I kind of do from watching videos on your Instagram, but that's kind of it. Like,
Oh,
it's like,
thanks.
I think that there's also like something that we want to do
Mm.
Yeah.
is surface how these objects are made and try to establish some type of connection
Mm.
between the buyer and the piece and understand how from like start to end it's created, because I think
Right.
that also kind of justifies and like in your head, like when I initially saw some of the prices for the items that we're selling, I'm like, that's like a crazy expensive piece.
Yeah.
And especially coming from like only buying, I think I buy like CB2 and like Wayfair, and that's like kind of it. That's like all I've really bought
Right.
in terms of
Right.
furniture. And it's like, how do you, but I also am like curious about it and I love handmade things. And how do you educate that user to understand what they're buying and what goes into it? And like that the biggest cost here is time to make these pieces, but also like the quality of the materials and all these things. Like, how do you communicate that in a good way? So like right now, there's a lot of like the future of what we want to build.
Yeah.
And then there's the reality of any time you're building something, a tech platform, the hardest part, what I've learned is the hardest part is the little details that doesn't sound, nothing about it sounds exciting. It doesn't
Right.
sound unique. It doesn't sound different until you try it. It's like you need, and we're not even there yet where it's like you try it and it's like amazing. But it's like that is the goal. And like that is your IP essentially, is like the time it takes to understand how do you structure, what buttons exist and where do they live and what do they do and what pages exist and what features do you need to actually provide that value. And that's going to be a constant experiment. But what I want to do, like instead of trying to build that all in one go and try to boil the ocean, I think what the next step for Erria and what I really want to focus on is what is the minimum thing that we can get out into the world that is polished and works and build on top of it and have the people using it and selling on the platform informing what we're building and how it feels and
Awesome.
how it works, instead of like us assuming. And like we did do a lot of manual onboarding where we look on their website and try our onboarding flow, and we've been iterating on our upload flow, just fixing bugs and different things. Oh, this case doesn't work because like this person structures things in a different way, or like doesn't have dimensions or something. It's like there's a bunch of things that we had to just go through ourselves to figure
Right.
out what that flow should be. And now it's like the next step of like, okay, now let's hand over the accounts, start getting, we're growing our inventory. Now let's kind of shift gears and focus on the buyer side, which like we have built, but it just needs some work. We need to work on search a little bit more, do this stuff, and we'll get there soon.
No, I think that's a great approach. Obviously, that's the best approach. Put a good MVP out there, learn from what's going on, the behaviors of the platform, and then fix, iterate, you just, yeah. Yeah, so
It's I mean, like I think a great example of that, and maybe we can just workshop this live, is the conversation that Jen and I this morning were having about shipping and logistics, where essentially like we built a relationship with this company called Arda, and Arda is like a tech-enabled fine art and collectibles shipping facilitator, shipping broker. So they have technology that you can integrate into your marketplace or into your e-com site. And they are the ones that surface all the shipping quotes. And they do everything from giving you a shipping label to like full door-to-door white glove delivery all over the world. Global, fine art, collectible logistics. A question that we had that, is we didn't really like actually check, know the answer to until this morning is like, well, how does the pricing for that look? Like, yeah, that sounds like really good when you say it, but will it cost the same price as the piece to get it shipped? And that's something that we started to kind of, we ran a lot of tests through ARTA this morning to see, okay, how competitive are their quotes? What instances does it work for? What does it not work for? And then that turned into a larger conversation of, do shipping and logistics need to be automated from day one? Does that even make sense? Or could it potentially be a better...
It does make sense, dude.
But it also, in a lot of ways, it doesn't make sense because a lot of these quotes that are auto-generated are enormously expensive.
Yeah.
Because they probably account for like any instance, any case where like even a local delivery, like they don't have, like they're, go ahead.
There's crazy examples, right? Like, for example, if we forgot to ask if it's on the second floor of a home, if the piece is going to end up on the second floor of a home, that changes the quote sometimes by hundreds of dollars or several hundreds of dollars to go up somewhere, right? So there's always going to be these minor questions. But think about it, as a young designer, you have almost no idea how to get a shipping. You're not working with a shipping logistics company.
It's not about
yet,
that. It's more of like, again, thinking about the buyer perspective, where, for example, like we quoted, out of curiosity, I was like, okay, if you have a dining table made in Connecticut and you are trying to get that dining table to New York City, ARTA does not handle very local like deliveries like that well. And the quote for that was essentially the same price as if you were shipping that dining table from California to New York.
Right. Because it was the same price. Yeah. Exactly.
I've had that happen with pieces, guys, where just going to whatever, New Jersey or something is just as much as shipping it to Miami.
Yeah. But the thing is like that kind of ruins the point. And there's another solution for that case. And, and we'll probably learn, like, maybe we set like a radius, within like, if it's delivery and pickup within, 100 miles or something, we find a local person to do it. Cause that piece like doesn't need to be crated in, depending on what it is. Like if it's a wood dining table, it can be blanket wrapped and delivered and doesn't need to have exactly the same treatment. And so for us, it's like, it was more a question of what is MVP and what's not. Yeah.
I do think.
And how do you handle that without like still trying to maintain a seamless experience? Because it's also not seamless if you are buying a $4,000 table and then you see that the shipping is $2,500.
Yeah.
When in reality, maybe it's better to not have it automated and to actually like have some sort of high touch in order to get, to go from 2,500 to 800. And like in some cases that might actually be possible.
But then that high touch means us going and finding a shipping provider, a local shipping provider that we were looking at other quotes, and it was like $125 to ship a $4,000 table that was 175 pounds from New York to Connecticut. But then what's the quality of that shipping? Who is that shipper? That seems really risky. And we want, it's hard. It's like creating that entire shipping and logistics platform.
I'll tell you something.
Doing that in-house is hard.
Since we're doing this live on the show, because I've dealt with logistics my entire career, 20 years.
And your pieces are complicated too, fragile. Yeah.
It's all fugazi, it's all fugazi, okay? The shipping logistics pricing varies tremendously. Maybe an approach could be to have several aggregators of pricing, right? We make them compete and then you get your best price essentially. And logistic companies, unfortunately, are still like pen and paper kind of companies. They're not high tech companies. This is like they're still used to like taking. It's like crazy. And of course, over the years, we've really dwindled it down to there's 3 shippers that essentially we quote from, and we don't play them against each other, but we certainly are saying, well, how come this is twice where we've had twice as much money to ship something where it's like a
Mm.
$10,000 shipping fee and a $20,000 shipping fee. It's like, you're like, wow. So, and you're trying to understand, well, why is that?
Mm.
And because there's no real transparency into this industry. I think the thing that I know you don't want to become like a logistics solving, you don't want to like solve logistics as a tech company, but if you get if you're able to as part of your long-term mission, yeah, I think it's valuable to put energy into this because it is a major part of the industry. It's a major part of our day-to-day. You could ask Mika, we didn't talk about it on her sales episode, but it is a massive part of our
Mm.
day is dealing with logistics. So anyway, being able to have something for the makers, I think is important. I understand the difficulties of it, but I also think you guys are young and smart as hell, and you will somehow manage to solve this.
I think we will. I
Uh,
think it's not even. I know that down the line, uh, things will find our area's
yeah,
unique solution to it.
yeah,
Whether that's like certain folks like know how to handle their logistics, certain maybe younger makers don't, and finding. But it's like having that. It's finding that's the solution like for now, and like what is the best like for now for first version solution, because a lot of it is like weighing time over money, over like maker experience, over buyer experience. And, a lot of we don't yet like fully understand like where the buyer drop off is. And like, is it better to quote something that's super, super expensive? Or is it better to, try to get back to them with like a quote within the next like 3 to 4 hours? Or, where what is how many
no,
people
yeah,
are actually checking out for like a $6,000 dresser on the spot? And it's honestly probably not that many, and sort of understanding that in this very high touch industry, how how high touch should we stay? Because I think the inclination is to go like, let's, you know, it's tech, let's automate as much as possible. And maybe that's, possible a decade from now. But, maybe it's not necessarily the smartest thing from day one to try to
yeah.
automate that as much as possible. I don't know.
Well, if any shippers are out there listening to this podcast, let's talk because no, I think we
Yeah.
could be
Or
helpful. By the
logistics
way,
experts.
logistic experts and shippers out there because I think it's an opportunity for them. They're constantly need more and more clients. Okay, they're hungry for clients. I know because we're out there shipping stuff, and so but we need to come into the modern era, of how someone gets a quote for something without having to make a call. Talk about that. It needs to be able to be automated, and so
Yeah.
I think it could be
But that's essentially what
strong.
Arta is doing, but it's
Art is
like
doing that, right?
there's
Right.
so many there's so many
There's so
different
idiosyncratic.
cases.
Everything is crazy about it. It's
Yeah.
like, right. Well, these are the things that Erria is trying to solve, guys, and that's what they're here doing and building, and and they're doing it so that you guys can have a better marketplace and experience to sell your work and to get you from your studio directly to someone's home that they can love and enjoy it. So, um, I we're pretty deep into the episode, so I think it's been great. I hope that people have
Mm.
understood now that when we talk about area kind of loosely, that they understand what you guys are actually trying to do, and you know that soon enough the platform. So you guys are onboarding people. We'll see when it's fully out there. Hopefully soon they'll be launching this year.
I think
Um,
by
Mhm.
the time that this episode comes out,
Okay.
you can for sure apply as a maker to sell.
Awesome.
And then hopefully we'll hit the point where it'll be by invite only to the trade. So if you're a trade
Awesome.
person, you can go on, you can, fill out the kind of trade wait list. There's also a general wait list, but we won't, we will kind of want to make sure that the platform's in a little bit of a more stable place till we open up to the public.
Totally.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Jen, thanks for being on today, giving us a little bit of your background and a little bit of what you guys are doing and your story, which was really cool to hear. I didn't know all of that stuff, although we have spoken quite a bit, but not in that regard. So
Yeah.
yeah, and Alyssa, I know you guys have been going through your ups and downs, and there's been some interesting stories, and we can probably have another episode down the line where we talk about it, as it iterates, as it grows. And but all right, guys. So thank you for listening. I hope, Hildy, that you got your info on Erria now. My mother-in-law, she was so curious. And anyway, I wanted to thank you guys, the audience, we got a lot of cool emails and DMs about pricing and stuff like that from Mika's episode. And it's been nice. I've been doing little voice memos with people on Instagram about their pricing, which has been really fun. And so I like that you guys are interacting with us and responding to the stuff that we're putting out there. It's been really nice hearing from you guys, getting some comments. And I promise you soon we're going to have an episode where we talk we talk about some of the questions that you guys have had and dig a little bit deeper into that stuff. We're going to have an AI episode coming up. We have some really fun stuff coming up. So we're really glad you guys have been supporting it. And yeah, keep listening, keep subscribing, keep hitting the like button, comments, and yeah, I
Share
really
with your
appreciate you
friend.
guys.
Share with
Share
your
with a friend.
studio mate.
Yeah, keep it going. So thanks again, you guys. This was a great episode. I'm really happy that we finally talked about Erria and what you guys are up to. I'm super proud of what you guys are doing, and I'm super proud to be part of it. And yeah, I just can't wait for it to be out there so people can start to sell their stuff.
Yeah, I can't wait as well. And I hope that, we'll actually maybe, every quarter or something do a little update episode.
For sure. Oh my God. It's
it's changing like every week.
Yeah.
What's going on in our world?
I want to do
Every
an
day.
episode. I want to do one too, where I talk a bit about what's going on in my studio and that
Yeah.
stuff, so that people can get a little bit like, they know about us too, about our day-to-day struggles and whatnot. So, all right. Thanks for joining Design Discord, and we will see you soon. Thursdays.
See you next time.
See you next time. Bye, guys.
Bye.